On this episode of the SSI Executive Conversations podcast, Darwin talks with Mark Sellers, author of The Funnel Principle, about the customer buying journey. They discuss the critical steps every business owner needs to take in order to lay out a process to see what your customers' needs are. More importantly, they discuss how to identify hurdles that may be preventing your customers from reaching your product.
Well, I am extremely excited to have Mark Sellers on the SSI Executive Conversations podcast today. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Darwin.
I first met you around 2013, 14, I believe. I was at PSS, which had just been purchased by McKesson, and our Vice President of Sales, Brian Johnson, bought all of his sales leaders a copy of your book, The Funnel Principle. It made a significant impact on me and really completely changed my perception of sales funnel management and how I applied that with my teams from that point forward. Mark then published his second book called Blind Spots, The Hidden Killers of Sales Coaching in 2019. At this point, over 120 sales teams around the world have implemented his sales system, which includes proprietary buying journey, sales model, the buy cycle funnel. The buy cycle funnel model 20 years ago helped launch a new standard in the sales process design. And so I'm excited to have you on here because as SI continues to grow, as we move into our 8-year anniversary and bringing more value to our partners, commercial top talent and commercial launch strategies is a big part of that. So I'm excited to have you share your expertise and your experience with our following. So welcome, and I really appreciate you joining us today.
My pleasure, and thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. Well, why don't you get us started talking a little bit about what exactly, from your perspective, is the customer buying journey?
Sure. That's a good place to start. It's such a foundation of everything we do, but I think it's also what I'm saying now is it's the new standard work. So taking a page out of lean, business practices, standard work is something that you do routinely, rotely, if you will, and it's the way you run your whatever process it might be. The customer buying journey was something that I think I formalized what other people were kicking around. Rackham was kicking around in spin selling the idea of a buying process. Bosworth was kicking around the idea of a buying journey with solution selling. But I said, why isn't there something more formal, defined, et cetera, that lays this out? Because unless I'm crazy or I'm missing something, I think that the world of sales needs this. So very simple. The customer buying journey is just a way to map out the stages and the milestones that a customer goes through when they make a purchase. It's that simple. So people sometimes refer to it as similar to stage gating in new product development or other kinds of processes. And I say, yeah, I mean, as much as I know about stage gating, I think there's some similarity there. But it's very simple, but it's also very powerful.
I agree completely. And from a program management, project management standpoint, we've done a lot of work with partners in that area, helping a client start their first PMO. I didn't really understand, I think, stage gating from that terminology until I got into this business, and then working with candidates, and then I started to understand that. I think you're absolutely correct, and that was I think a light bulb moment for me, because maybe not how I managed the sales cycle or reached out to potential clients back when I was in the sales world, but it was much more sales activity driven. I worked hard today. I did these activities, and obviously you have to have positive outcomes and you have to gain market share and those kind of things. But from getting into a leadership standpoint and then understanding how you bring real data so the executive team can make decisions more appropriately, that was a real it was a real big moment in terms of thinking of that and thinking about how I'm grading my activity is completely wrong based on that activity versus the customer. So why don't you kind of share with us why it is more effective from your perspective?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, half of the nail on the head. I'll give you the other half. Um, for years, in you and I are both old enough to know what it used to be like when we went through 2 weeks of training at the
Yeah.
Marriott or whatever. It really focused on product stuff and selling activity. And as I tell people today, that's not a recipe for disaster. It's not a recipe for failure. Far be it for me to suggest anything like that. I just think there's a more effective way. And I think
Yeah.
when we focus instead of on our selling activities, what we have to do next in the sales process,
Hmm.
and instead of that, focus more on the customer commitments, the commitments we need stakeholders to make, then great things can happen. And that's because when somebody goes through a purchase journey, they have to make commitments.
Hmm.
They don't go through a sales process, they go through a buying journey, and they do that by making commitments. So it seems subtle, and it's interesting when I go through the training and we normally customize this bicycle funnel for clients, and we introduce it to them, and they nod their head like, okay, that makes sense. And inevitably, a month later, when we're having a conversation about a deal or a funnel audit or something, they don't get it yet. And 6 months later, some of them still don't get it. So
Right.
it's deceptively very simple, and yet we have to kind of unlearn what we have been taught over the
Yeah.
years. And that's a from a human nature standpoint, that's very difficult. So the key is net, we focus on the commitments that customers are making to determine where they are in their journey. And then our selling activities, here's the influence. We're trying to influence them to make certain commitments, right?
Yeah.
Broker a meeting with another stakeholder, introduce us to somebody, help us with a gatekeeper, give us insight, give us some intelligence about the business impact of the problems we're talking about. All of those are examples of commitments. And so when we get those from those stakeholders, we should feel like we're making progress.
Yeah. As you're talking about this, I think I grew up. My first real sales training for me that was impactful was Tom Hopkins and his different sales close and the Benjamin Franklin, and you got all these different types of
Yeah.
closes. Um, my evolution in this area of my life, because I think for a lot of people, the word sales, right, is kind of a dirty word, or, I could never do sales. And I think that, first of all, nobody really wants to be sold anything. Um, and then, Miller Hyman and consultative approach and what people need. And I always say every time you interact, you either gain credibility or you lose it. And I think you take the funnel aspect and how you manage that, how you interact with the client or the prospective client. If you don't understand how they make their decisions and what's important to them, then how can you bring the right tool or solution or process to the table for them that's a mutually beneficial win? And at the end of the day, to me, relationships, and if you're selling something, I always looked at it, I want to build a relationship where there's another opportunity, another opportunity. You build a relationship, and no relationship that's mutually beneficial, from my perspective, typically lasts very long. So I think there's, I don't know if you could maybe speak to your journey and sort of the sales approach and how that ties into it. Um, but I think that might be an interesting thought at this point.
Well, you used the word epiphany. I had an epiphany when I created this bicycle funnel model, which led me to writing this book, Funnel Principle. I was selling Miller Hyman. I was a consultant for them for 11 years, independent
Yeah,
consultant. That's their channel of the market. I love their stuff. It's good stuff.
right. It
And
is.
4 years or so into that, I just started thinking, as good as this stuff is, there's something missing. And I've always been kind of a bit of a tinkerer and just want to explore and learn more. And eventually, that seed led to me coming across a number of things, including it's just weird how things come at you when you start to put intention to stuff, right? I
Right.
mean, we think
Absolutely.
about our personal lives. We start attracting different kinds of people to us when we break some bad habits, get rid of some bad patterns in our lives or whatever. And I remembered a book that I had in college written by Roger Blackwell, the marketing professor at Ohio State. It was called Consumer Behavior. And it's it's used all over the world and has been for years. He had a decision-making model in there called the EKB model of decision making. Engel, Collett, and Blackwell, three professors. And I
Huh.
found it, in my bookcase somewhere buried. Like, wow, yeah, So that got me interested. And then I started finding that was more B2C, business to consumer. My world is B2B, so
Right.
I kept looking for B2B models, and I had a hard time finding any. But I did find some stuff from a guy named Jagdish Sheth, another professor again at the University of Pittsburgh. So not to get into the weeds, but just all of these things were placed in front of me, and I pursued and explored and was curious. And pretty soon, I just kept thinking, I think there's something here. I floated the idea to a division of Goodyear that 150 salespeople,
Right.
and pitched the idea to them. This was before the book was written, and they said, "This sounds very interesting." And we rolled out the training. I productized it, and they loved it. And I said, "This has got some legs," which led me eventually to leave Miller Hyman on good terms. And I said, I need to devote 100% of my time to see if I can make a go of this idea called funnel principle. So I spent some time writing the book, and the book was ready, and then I published it. I'm right. That was when I split with Miller Hyman, or split from Miller Hyman, and it's a good move because I,
Absolutely.
I really enjoy what I'm doing, and I'm more successful, commercially, and that's all fun and everything. But it also led to just a whole different journey, and I've enjoyed that journey the last 12, 14 years.
Well, I'm certainly glad that happened. You certainly made an impact in my career from that perspective, and how I looked at funnel management and how important it is to making sure that the right information, and that your sales team is creating their funnel based on that buying journey, because otherwise that information that comes up to the executive team, and how you forecast and how you look at when you're going to make decisions to spend money, and as a business owner now, if the information into that is incorrect, then you're not going to be making the best decisions and the most efficient decisions. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
Let's kind of look at, maybe you could talk a little bit, how does someone begin to identify and sell to their customers' buying journey?
So all roads kind of come back to the stakeholder commitments, but really, really making those a priority. So if you think about any deal, like right now, you could go to your funnel, your
Mhm.
pipeline, grab a deal you're working on, and ask yourself, okay, in my process, whatever I use, where do I think that deal is in the process? Why do I think it's there? And a lot of times, I think you're going to get something like this. It's there because of something I've done.
Right,
It's at the proposal stage. Why?
because I
Because I
proposed it.
It's at the sample stage. It's at the trial stage. Why? So if that's true, then and if you have a funnel full of those, again, not a recipe for disaster guaranteed, but I think there's a better way. What you could do is you could challenge yourself to say this: what commitments have stakeholders made in in this sale that I've been trying to make?
Right.
So have people introduced you to other stakeholders, which open doors to having different kinds of conversations with economic buyers, champions, people, PFAs, we call them, person with financial authority. Did that happen? Did somebody commit to giving you some pretty good information about the organization and where they are and their appetite for, you selling whatever it is you're selling to them right now? All of that stuff. So if you can find the commitments that customers have made, you're going to maybe prove to yourself that the reason you are where you are is because of those commitments, not so much of because of the selling activities. So I would do that, and I think it'd be a really interesting conversation among a team to go through an exercise like that. I think it would reveal some pretty good insights.
Oh, I think that's extremely smart. And as we've continued to grow, I think outcomes, I mean, if you're not measuring your outcomes and your efficiencies to create best practices, that's not good in terms of understanding the health of the company, where you're going. And from an analytics standpoint, that's where we're really moving as a company in terms of analytics, in terms of the tools that we bring to the table for our clients, and why they should partner with us in certain ways, depending on what they're looking for the right outcome. And so when you talk about those different activities, if you're not looking at your funnel and determining how efficient, how accurate your assumptions are, then your ability to predict whether or not you're going to hit goal, whether or not, if you want to expand into a new market, whether you want to add on a new product, your ability to really understand where you're at and how your resources, because you only have so many resources. And so obviously if you're not targeting the right place in sales, then that's a big problem if you're not targeting the right audience. But then if you're not customizing your approach and how you interact with them based on what matters to them, and in this point, their buying process and how they make decisions, then, as you said, not disastrous, but you're missing out on greater efficiency.
Yeah, yeah. And if you manage a team and you have, let's say you're a sales manager and you have 6 salespeople, and a salesperson has 1, maybe 2 of those deals where they think they're farther along the process than they really are, chances are your entire team has a set of those. And
Right.
chances are that there's more than you actually think they have. So you could be looking at a region funnel or a division funnel, a half, West Coast, East Coast, North America, global funnel that is really not as accurate as you need it to be, which really speaks to when you get opportunity. We're talking about deals, opportunities. When you get opportunity management right, then that automatically makes you more effective in managing your funnel, because you're going to have a funnel full of more accurate information. So, I mean, a lot of times we'll do baselines before and after. Give me your funnel value, and either by sales rep or by region or whatever, and then we take them through our process and everything, and we use the bicycle funnel to say you can only value in your funnel the deals that are past what we now call the checkbox, which is or it's not a stage, but it's a checkbox. It's where the customer says, we're committed to buying something from somebody. We're not thinking about it. We haven't budgeted for it. We're committed to buy something from somebody.
We're not kicking the tires. We're actually
exactly.
It's going to be a part of the P&L.
Yes, and so then I say, well, that's your funnel value. All of those, everything that is not past that checkbox yet, it's maybe very important, and you need to have visibility to that. Back to lean, but you don't add the deal values for those early stage 1s and 2s kinds of opportunities. And so that, cut off that threshold, we see funnels go from 3.5 million to 1.2 million, and the reps go, what happened? And what we say is, what we've made your funnel a lot more accurate, and that's a good thing.
And
but
you think about a sales leader's time management as you go, whether that's a sales manager, director, all the way up to the vice president of sales, business development, marketing, whatever it is. But in terms of East Coast, West Coast, you have different sections. And if your funnel management process is not as accurate as possible, you might think that you have a region that's super healthy and is going to generate a certain amount of revenue, and then be, to your point, completely surprised. 3.5, now it's 1.5. What happened? And they spent their time and additional training and energy in an area where really they missed out on the area that needed the most, all because their baseline of funnel principles is not as efficient, not as accurate as it could be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is what I do every day. In my business, I do a little bit of training and then a whole lot of coaching and listening to deal reviews, listening to funnel audits, and then coaching managers, et cetera. And just recently, 2 of these popped up. I had a guy yesterday say that they had a deal that was 99% confident to be retained, an existing customer that basically they lost. Okay. And he's a new chief revenue officer. He's like, how does that happen?
95% gone.
9%. Yeah. And then I have I have a new client right now too, that they have a large deal for them that they think is, I'm just going to use their terms. They think it's about 75%, 80% down the path, and they're feeling really, really good about their chances. Well,
Okay.
guess what? They just got bought. The company, not my client, but who they're selling to, just got bought. And I say, time out. Because how many times do you see an acquiring company come in and say, oh, you're about ready to spend $5.3 million on X, Y, and Z? Go for it. All right.
It's not
No,
going to happen.
I'm not going to ask any questions about that. So it's high profile, it's exposure. And I said, you guys, you guys need to be asking some questions fast to see where this is and where it could be going. So my point is, I mean, and these are pros.
Yeah.
So these mistakes can still be made really commonly. These are not your rookies making these mistakes. These are not just your C players. These are your B players, and
Yeah.
sometimes your A players making these mistakes. And they're just too costly to make if you can avoid them.
Well, and it's not, I mean, humbly, when I read your book, I mean, I had success in sales, and when I first started, I wasn't a very good leader at all, but I had a great mentor, and then I started to get better in that area. I was always, a hard worker, and I think had people's best interest in terms of why I was, targeting them. They could use that product or that
Yeah.
service, but when I got this book, the funnel principle, and read through it, it changed that paradigm of how you look at things, was something that's brought me value the rest of my career. And to your point, I mean, was I, a horrible salesperson or sales manager? Not necessarily, but I didn't have that frame of reference that once you look at it the right way, you're just going to be more efficient by default, because you're feeling, first of all, you're the data you're looking at is more accurate. So then you can diagnose what your challenges are and make better decisions.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It just sets up a whole different kind of conversation between managers and their salespeople. A
Right.
good conversation, a
I,
healthy
I agree.
conversation, and that's what I'm trying to do, in getting the frontline leaders to have better coaching conversations about their deals, about their account reviews, and yes, of course, about their sales funnels.
Well, I had my last question for you. We kind of got into organically in terms of how it can impact, the organization and the sales funnel management. And you kind of already gave some great examples there. But as I started SSI focused more on technical rules, on quality and regulatory and engineering. And then we, over the last couple of years, 2.5 years, started to get into more commercial roles, and then brought on Brian Stegall to help drive that. But we're, probably a third of our clients are newer companies that have a product on the market now, and then maybe they're looking to go into commercial launch. And so I was really excited to have you on, because we just got done talking about, right? Sometimes A players can make this mistake. So if we can share some information and some content and lead them to your books, and who knows, maybe some consulting opportunities for what you do, that's going to be better for those companies, the health of their companies, and as they grow to project, make those projections more accurately.
We're here to help any way we can.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Mark. I really appreciate your time, and wish you an incredible 2023.
Thank you again, Darwin. I enjoyed it.
For the video recording of this podcast, along with additional resources, make sure to find us online at shurigsolutions.com, or follow us on social media and LinkedIn at Shurig Solutions.